Hey folks, I'm here in Denmark in Odense at Codegarden, the Umbraco developer conference, which is organized yearly here. And I just happened to meet this wonderful lady called Emma Burstow, and I figured let's have a conversation with you.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome, thank you for joining. So I met you for the first time here during your session here at this event.
Yep.
And you were mentioning that you did a lot of work here in community. So can you tell something about yourself?
Sure. So I came from the Umbraco community. It was my very first experience of a tech community. I came in as a very new developer, an MVC developer whose employer told me to go and learn Umbraco, as though it's that simple. Go and learn some Umbraco and that's it. Come back and build us a website, it will be fine. I always say that the best way to learn anything is on the job, and that's because that's how I learned my whole trade. So the community was very, very essential to my development as a developer. And I spent lots of time at events. I came to events. I started speaking at events very early because my background's actually in education and teaching. So it almost felt natural, although in teaching I knew what I was talking about, whereas as a new developer I often didn't feel I did. So I would come along and the community really, really embraced me. They told me to get up on stage and talk about the thing I'd just learned. Fast forward a few years, I was doing it for other developers. My day job was, headphones on, ignore everybody. That's a classic, web developer.
Being in the flow,
right? Don't talk to me, headphones on. But I really missed the people aspect of the job, particularly during the pandemic when everything became virtual, and I realized that so much of what I love about what I do is tech communities. So February last year, I joined Umbraco as an organization, and I joined them as a developer advocate, a job role that I didn't even know existed when I came into tech. And when I first heard it existed, I thought, wow, do people get paid for this? That's my dream job. So it was a great marriage for me. And now, since I've been in role, it's been about kind of trying to ensure that I take what I was always doing and turn it into some kind of process so that I'm not just helping developers like myself. I'll always look for the learner. I'll always look for maybe the outsider, the person that didn't have a traditional education. I'll say, right, I want to work with that person. But there's so many more people out there and there's so much untapped potential. So for me now, I'm trying to make sure that I build, process is a boring word, but it can actually save us from bias sometimes. So build process in so I can reach out to lots of people. So tech communities are important to me.
Sounds like an amazing journey you had there. So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you started out being a member of the community.
Yes.
And it's awesome that you can make your job out of that in the end. But it wasn't always like that. So going back to that moment, so what do you think is important for a community to welcome new talent like yourself?
Okay, well, I have some strong feelings around this.
We love them.
Yeah, good. Because so sometimes I'll put one thing at the top and we'll see what I come out with today. But I think safety is key. I came to my first event, my first big tech event was a Codegarden. I came along and I didn't stand around on my own for long. People were kind, they reached out, they asked me if I was good, did I want a coffee and what had I seen that day. And I think often in tech communities, there are lots of introverts in tech communities because it's such a dream job, headphones on for an introvert. And the people that approached me were they were bringing their A game to do that, and that meant a lot. So I felt very included, not just invited, but also included. And that led in turn to me feeling safe. The prevailing vibe, the prevailing atmosphere at Umbraco events is one of friendliness. It's a part of our culture. It's been a part of our culture a long time. And now we have things like a really strong code of conduct that we wrote with the community that makes sure that people feel really safe, not just at real life events, but also in virtual spaces when they're making pull requests.
Yeah.
You can contribute code that you're not 100% to, and are we ever 100%? And rest assured that nobody is going to challenge you in a way that is uncomfortable, because we don't do that here. And the reason we don't do that here is because we have a very good code of conduct and lots of community champions that just keep the space very safe. So I think safety is really important. I was I lacked confidence. You know, I really tried hard to tell people how much I didn't know when I first got here. Please don't ask me anything, I know nothing. And I was always encouraged, and as a result, you know, I learned I could learn, and I stayed. So safety, I think, is the number one thing for me today.
Cool, and I think I agree with that, but there's something else there as well. You mentioned like doing the pull request and also being safe there and being welcoming there. So I think like a lot of projects also are struggling, like how do I get more contributions, and how do I get more diversity in my community? So you probably have some thoughts about that as well. Can you share them?
Absolutely. So big fan of public vulnerability, and I'm definitely not the first person to think of that, but it's something that's really worked and that we've built into the way that we interface with the community here in my team, and actually the rest of Umbraco often do it almost unconsciously, maybe without trying. So one of the most recent events repeating events that I've helped to organise is the Umbraco Lab. So on a Thursday lunchtime, we all get together and we hack something or we build something. And when people are going to feature, I always tell them, don't plan. You mustn't plan, show up. Like, we want to see the process. We want to see you get it wrong before you get it right.
Isn't that difficult for people to like have the confidence to?
Absolutely.
Like I would be like I'm doing this for many years and I'm still like, oh, I don't know if I want to like, ooh.
And how do we scale that? That's the thing, because is it comfortable? Not for most people. And the people that know our community, they're comfortable doing it. They know it's friendly, they've been around a while. So we're trying to really scale that. And the message that I give, quite often, we look at people who we consider to be experts and we think they never get anything wrong. There's nothing I love more than when somebody's doing a demo and it's not going well, you know, and they're able to say, well, the demo gods are not with me today, because it gives heart to all the people that think, well, I could never be on stage doing a demo. I think when we look at our mistakes and we're happy showing them, then other people are more comfortable coming, and they may make mistakes. And I tell people not to plan. Of course they plan. You know, people do what they need to get comfortable. But what we try to promote is this idea that we all program, or you know, perhaps we don't program, perhaps we contribute in other ways, and wax lyrical about that too. And as a part of that process, we don't get everything right first time. So let's do it in public. And tomorrow we'll actually have a session where some people will be making their first pull request. Yeah. An experienced contributor and then somebody who's brand new. And the idea is to show, you know, we can all do it together, and how encouraging the community can be when that happens.
Yeah, I learned about that session tomorrow, where you're just gonna do that like first pull request. I think that's really exciting, and like coming back to that, so that also you have a lot of experience there. So because you were challenged when you were like just starting to get uncomfortable and share your like mistakes or new learnings. I think that's really beautiful. So about that whole community and contributions. So if you look at the current open source ecosystem, it's not just Umbraco, of course, but a little bit wider. So what do you see happening at this moment?
It's difficult. So as a project, we're experiencing a kind of we're going through a relearning of how to measure contributions, because we see pull requests and we see other kinds of contributions. But then as a wider ecosystem, we see a lot of the same people, or the same types of people making contributions. And I think that big projects, like when Microsoft became open source and things, big projects reaching out and having, like, putting people front and center who aren't the same types of people each time, brings more people in. But it's hard to do these things in public, and a repository is public. Like, there's no pull request I've ever made where I haven't thought 1 million people will see this and judge it, you know, as though 1 million people are looking at my 3 lines of code. So I think it's all, often it comes back to representation. We want to see different people doing the work, and we want to see the people that we think of as heroes getting it wrong too, and holding up their hand and saying, wow, I made a mistake. But my biggest fear is that if we don't diversify, we don't innovate. We have to, in order to innovate, we have to look widely, we have to invite. And that's the key for me, it's inviting, not just leaving it open, but inviting people in. So that's what I'd like to see more.
And that's hitting the nail on the head, right? Because like if you, it's the beauty of open source. It's the collaboration with the people with different backgrounds and different companies they work in, or different solutions or problems they try to solve with your solution.
Yeah.
Like and getting that pull request in and having the discussions going on. But that also brings me to the topic of contributions.
Yep.
So what is a valuable contribution?
Oh my goodness. Attending an event is a really valuable contribution. I look a lot at the kinds of contributions that people make. We have an MVP program, and historically it's celebrated the people that have been noticed. And how do you create a program that celebrates everyone? How can you celebrate someone if they're not noticeable? And a lot of the very valuable work that people do isn't necessarily showy. I'm a card-carrying extrovert. I was happy to get up on stage early because I had years in a classroom teaching secondary school kids. But there's so many like quiet heroes. So some of the most valuable contributions are the ones that we'll never see. We measure lines of code. It's so lovely. You have numbers. I know how many pull requests we get each day, each week, and I know how many contributors we have. And it's very easy to measure those as metrics. And then, you can say we're a healthy project. We have A, B, and C. But I think some of the more difficult things to measure are the quiet mentorship, the chats that go on. Even, in our Discord server, we have a Wordle channel. And when we were looking at measuring what happens in our Discord server and how many people are talking, we thought about excluding that channel, but actually no.
Why?
No. Yeah. Precisely. It's active because our community is active, and when we have people crossing that divide, we're both developers, and actually today we want to talk about something else. That should be measured too. I don't think it should be excluded, because from there it grows. The contribution grows from there. Yeah. I am going to give a talk at an event if I've had a nice time at a meetup. And you were talking earlier about onboarding and that experience being so important. If you have a good onboarding experience, you're much more likely to stay in the job. My first meetup experience, I was looked after, I was spoken to, I was asked if I was new and greeted, and asked what I wanted to eat. Oh, that was amazing. There was food. It was incredible. And what I'd expected when I walked in was a frosty reception and for everyone to give me a technical test to see if I belonged there. So that's how we encourage contributions. I also think that quite often you will see the numbers that we love go up if you look after those things. So that's where I stand on those.
Yeah, and if you look at numbers, there's of course the number of people who interact with your community and contributors.
Yep.
And then you can discuss what kind of contributors. So what is a successful community to you?
A successful community, I would say, oh wow, that's such a tough question. A successful community is, so if I use this event as an illustration, we haven't been together in person for 3 years. And I'm asking people how things are, and they're saying things like, it's good to see my friends. Friends, we don't come into a tech community to create friendships, but we do by accident here, and we do that because we make each other feel safe, because we have the shared interest. I've also asked, is it a good Codegarden? And they've said it feels the same. And we love that. For me, that feels comfortable. It's Hugo, which is very Danish, and I've murdered the pronunciation, and my fellow country people
sorry, Danish people.
And it's that consistency. We've gone through lots of changes as an organisation, but if people still feel included, welcomed, and like they're at their first Codegarden, then it's successful. So it's hard to measure a vibe and a mood. When I say it's a friendly community, no one scoffs. Nobody says, it's cheesy, that's a tagline. And the minute somebody does, I know that something's missing. Someone's needs aren't being met, and why is that? So it's that warmth and it's that friendliness. And if you know a way of measuring that, other than measuring the Wordle channel, you'll have to let me know.
Well, I'll think about
Yep.
it. Okay, thank you. So you have an amazing community here. I'm really awed about the friendliness indeed, and the openness, and the willing to connect with each other. So to close off, what is coming up in the community? What are your plans?
Plans in the community. So we have a few things to look forward to. We've got next year's Codegarden, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody thinks
it will
about
be on my list now, for sure. Yeah.
Wonderful. So glad to hear it. We have a fantastic MVP program. One of the things that I'm looking at this year is to make sure that the application process is long. So recently I became a Microsoft MVP and I had time.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I had time. I really enjoyed taking my time and submitting the things that I'd done. I was speaking a moment ago about how you find those quiet contributions. Well, you ask. And it's no good me putting a tweet out saying, who's doing something in the Umbraco community. Quite often people won't talk about their own achievements. So it's looking at that process and how we can streamline it in such a way that it speaks to every part of our community. So an MVP program that is fully, truly inclusive and that invites people on the inside. That's what I'm looking forward to this next.
Wow. Well, I'm curious to see what will happen in the Umbraco community. Of course, looking forward to next year's Codegarden. It has been an amazing event. People, if you're watching this, please come.
You're invited.
So thank you so much for making the time. If there's anything you would like to tell the viewers, if they're interested in joining the community, where they can find information.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a Discord server, but I can't quote the link off the top of my head. So I'll say that you should go to community.umbraco.com, and it's the one-stop shop to learn all about community. And from there, you will get an idea of how to get started. But I really can't stress this enough. Everybody has a contribution. Everybody has a contribution to make. So please, you're invited. Come.
You've heard it. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Suzanne. Lovely speaking with you.